very briefly, let's kind of, just as a project review, talk about what happened last week a little bit. So I'm building out an application using the Go language and the Gin framework in Go. And keeping with the Wild West theme from Wild West coding, the app I'm working on and building out is to help with rodeos. I'm starting with building an API of rodeo data, but we'll kind of expand the functionality as we progress through the project. My name is Ken Alger, and I'm with Cisco DevNet and the Cisco Developer Program. And if you recall from last time, we ended the session with parsing JSON from a static data file as our data source. Now, in this episode, we'll get that functionality working because it wasn't at the end of the last episode. And then we'll take a look at a few other things, things like adding some things to our struct that helps our data presentation from the API look a little bit more user-friendly. And as I mentioned last time, in this Wild West coding paradigm, there are things that I'm opting to do or not do based strictly on how I'm feeling at the time that I'm doing them. So some best practices in the overall development process may not be implemented right away, CI/CD pipelines or testing, for example. Now, I might very well come back to those later in the project, but straight away, it probably isn't going to be my focus. One best practice that I probably should do, but neglected last time because it was my first episode and I was nervous, was version control. So in this episode today, I'm going to implement that, create a GitHub repository for the project. And, a couple of the other things on my mind for this week are to incorporate some basic documentation into the project, define our API routes for the rodeo data, that sort of thing. So thank you everyone for joining and watching, and hold on tight because this rodeo is just getting started. So let's get going here and see about fixing that JSON parser issue. So if I head over to my IDE, so here we are in GoLand, which is by JetBrains, but that's what I'm using. You can use whatever editor IDE you're comfortable with. If we look here in rodeohandler.go, which we built out last time. So it's in the package handlers and we have our imports. We come down here to our list rodeos handler. This is where we ended last time and kind of got a little stuck. So to start with, to get our JSON parsing working, let's create a variable here called rodeos. I know we have one down below, but we're going to redo it here a little bit. And we're going to make this a models.rodeo variable there. So, and then we can keep this bit here about opening our JSON file. Where did my cursor go? Over here, so we can keep all this error message. That looks like we can kind of expand that a little bit and make that a little bit more helpful, right? I always like helpful error messages. I'm not the world's best coder, so anytime I can get error messages that help. Why is that coming up here as an error? Okay. Nope, that's still not. Well, we'll come back to that here in a second. Figure out what's going on. So down here, we're processing our JSON. We're deferring our closing of the JSON file so we can parse it. And then here's kind of where some of the issues that we had last time, I think we can do a little bit better. So we can, we still need that byte value read in here into the JSON file. So let's, we'll make that stuff go away. And in our unmarshalling, we are going to unmarshal our byte value. And we'll have that go over here to our rodeos variable. And here we also need to handle some error messages. It looks like it's complaining about that a little bit. So let's say that we have there, and we'll handle our error. Right, we'll handle that, and we'll do another print line of error converting file. All right. And then, so we're taking the byte value data that we're reading from the JSON file, and we're unmarshalling that, or moving that over into our rodeos variable here. So we should be able to make that go away. Then we're going to return that rodeos. And why is this saying that this is a problem? Probably because we need to do something like that. Nope. Why are we getting an error here? Interesting. It was working the other day. Let's see. So we have models rodeo. So literal or expected. That doesn't do it either. Interesting. So we make that go away, and we bring that. Now we get an unused import. We want a variable. We want caps on rodeos. We want that to be a slice of our model's rodeo. It doesn't like that. All right, so why is that not happy? If we do this, nope. All right. So when in doubt, we go off to the internet, right? And let's create a new tab here. Oops. Let's escape out of that. Close that out. Let's go here and go define variable as slice of struct. So I'm not seeing that. Go to the infamous Stack Overflow, which knows everything, right? And maybe we need to try go make. That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. That seems to satisfy that. All right, we have an error here for saying that we should handle this error for closing that. All right, let's try this out here and see. Let's go back over here to main.go and make sure that we have our list rodeos handler, which we do. Splendid. Let's clear that. And let's run this and see what we get. All right, so now we can hopefully, if we go over here to our browser, and let's go to localhost 8080. And if we do rodeos, which was our path, hey, look at that. We get our JSON from our JSON data that we were having over in our other, which was our sample JSON data. So that's great. We got our JSON parsing working here inside the rodeos handler. And if we go over here as well to Postman, we can do a GET request here from localhost 8080. We get our index that comes back, and then with all rodeos, if we send that, we should be getting back our sample ones as well. So that's fantastic. So it looks like we're getting that to work. It's working in Postman. It's working in the web. Looks like I was just kind of trying to overthink things a little bit last week. So now we have this up and running. That's fantastic. Let's enable version control here before we get stuck too much. So we did that. We enabled it with Git. Let's create a git ignore file here. There's a whole slew of things here that JetBrains allows you to have. Let's include Go and Goland. That seems like a good thing to have. We'll have JetBrains. And the other thing that I know that we're going to wind up needing here is .n for some configurations here in just a little bit. So I think if we generate that, we'll add that to Git. That's fantastic. And now we can share the project out on GitHub. Let's go to GitHub and share project on GitHub. All right, so sharing the repository name, that's always fun. Let's do Wild West Coding Rodeo app. And in here, we'll just do app for the Wild West Coding live stream. We'll share that out. And we'll do an initial commit here. And parsing JSON. Want to select our files that we're going to commit. We'll add that. And yeah, so I'll make sure to include a link there in the video notes for our for the repo. That's great. So there's a couple other files that, to be a good GitHub community member, we should probably have. One's a README file, so let's create a new file here, readme.md. We'll add that to Git. It's not going to be in there, and for whatever reason, it's adding that. So let's refactor and rename and get rid of the .go. There, and in here we'll do the title. We'll call it Rodeo app for Wild West coding live stream, and we'll come back to this later on, but we can save that out, and that's good. We can revisit that. Rodeo.go, there's our struct. We'll be working with that in a little bit. The other thing that we should probably add to this project is a open source license file. So let's create another file here, and we'll call it license MD. It's going to be there, and once again, for whatever reason, we're getting that Go extension put on there. We'll make that go away. You don't need our package main. So for the licensing, I'm a big fan of the MIT license for projects like this, and there's a pretty decent template out there for the verbiage for that and make everything happy. So I already have that. I'm going to cut and paste that in here. And that should be sufficient, I think, for our needs for right now. And then, to make our README kind of fun and exciting, we can go in and add a badge here to show that we have an MIT license. So that's great. So let's commit these changes. I'm on a Mac, so if we do Command Option K, I think it is here. Let's do Control K. There we go. So we have so added README .md and the license.md files. And we'll do a commit and push. And why is it not working? Commit anyway, because we have too many warnings. And we'll push that up to GitHub. And spectacular. Let's go back over here and we'll go to GitHub and look at my repositories here. And there we go, Wild West Coding Rodeo app. It's currently set to private though. So let's go here to the settings, and we don't want that to be private anymore. Change to public. Yes. Use a security key. Got to plug that into my computer. We'll use the security key. Come on. There we go. And there we have it. Now our Wild West coding is public, has our README, has our MIT license, and the README is going to need some work, but for right now, that's good. Okay. So, sorry, my mouth is pretty dry today. One of the things, now that we have some of the project housekeeping under my belt or under our belt here, if we look here at our JSON that's being returned, right? We're getting all these in capital letters, which isn't really how most JSON gets rendered and utilized. Let's go over here. We'll look, README's done for now, our license is done. We can, go over here to our project. So inside our Rodeo struct here in Go, It's rodeo.go. All these are capitalized here in our struct. Now in Go, a capitalized letter for these fields is the only way that Go knows to export those or be made invisible to um, files outside of the package. And then this package here is in models. So if we want to use it anywhere else, we need to have these capitalized. So that's great. That's what we want to happen. We want to be able to access those fields outside of our models package. So from Go standpoint, we need them to be capitalized. However, like I showed you over in the browser here, or in, if we're looking Postman, all these are capitalized out here as well. And that's just not really a great user experience because it's generally not how JSON is handled most of the time. So, what to do here, what to do. So I suppose that we could make a parser, right? That takes our field values from our struct and does some magical conversion inside of our handlers. But that really seems like 10 pounds of crazy in a 5-pound sack, don't you think? So fortunately, there's a simpler way. Thank goodness. We can leverage struct tags. And struct tags are just small pieces of metadata associated with the struct field that kind of help things out. So we can add those inside here to our rodeo struct. So they're pretty easy and straightforward. If we do a JSON tag here, and as I mentioned, the database that we're going to be using is MongoDB, which uses BSON, and their object ID is very commonly underscore ID is what they use. So in JSON, when we parse that out, we can do that. We'll do a JSON here we'll do name. So one of we're just doing these out as kind of what would be typical out there in the world or a JSON, but we could really name these anything we want. If we wanted start date to be, Ken, we could do that, and start date would come back as Ken, which would work, but really wouldn't be a great user experience because who knows what that would mean out there in the world. So we'll just go through here and do all these. For the venue ID, we'll do JSON and venue ID. Here we'll do another name. We want seats. Here we want seats available. That makes some sense. Here we want coordinates. Thank you, Goland, for filling that out for us. And then down here, we'll do the JSON for the venue itself. Since this is kind of an embedded document or an embedded struct, carry that JSON down outside of those curly brackets. JSON published at. Here we'll do updated at. These struct tags we can put in. We can also go in, and if we were returning XML information, which we might take a look at actually at some point, and have this not only return XML or JSON but XML as well. That could be kind of an interesting thing to go through and do. But you can go in, you can add these tags so that when it renders XML, so within here you would do an XML and very similar. So then when XML came out, if it was returning XML into the browser as a response, it would come back with XML lowercase and not uppercase. But for now, we're not going to worry about XML. We need to come down here and add in this for our events. All right. So if we save that, we'll go back here to the terminal. Let's stop that. We'll run it again. And now if we come over and, well, let's do it in Postman actually. So we'll go over here. So if we notice previously we had all uppercase. So we come over here into rodeos now and get the same thing back. Hey, look at that. We're getting it all back in lowercase. So that's, that's great. Yippee-ki-yay, we have JSON that's a little bit more standardized now. So let's go back to our IDE over here. Let's commit these changes. We'll do added struct tags to the rodeo struct. And we'll push those changes out. All right. So I think this is, coming along pretty well here. I really want to thank everybody for coming along on this journey with me today. If you have questions, comments, otherwise, feel free to leave them in the chat and I'll do my best to get to those. You can add comments to the video if it's, if you're watching this in a recorded state, that's fine too. And we'll try and get to those as we can. So one of the other things, I mentioned this at the beginning of the program here, we should be kind of following at least some best practices along this route. And I'm a big believer in documenting code. I know personally that there's been, multiple times when what I'm sure was completely obvious when I originally wrote the code became much less obvious when I revisited the project. And since I'm coding this in kind of a Wild West fashion and could very well forget what I was doing or intending to do along the way, adding documentation seems to be, the pretty prudent use of our time here. And one of the things with teams, if you're building it with a team, not only does it help to let other team members know what you're doing, but one advantage that you get there as well is that you have other people that you can ask what you were doing. And being in this Wild West paradigm of me just doing it, we don't really have that availability. So we'll add some documentation. With that in mind, I'm going to use Swagger for the project's documentation and kind of take a little bit of a Wild West coding approach to the docs-like code pattern. In Go, there's a Go Swagger package, and so you'll head over to goswagger.io/install.html and follow the installation instructions for your particular system. Once it's installed and accessible from the command line, and you can try Swagger version in the terminal to make sure that it's working, we can start adding comments to our code, and then we can have Swagger process the comments into documentation kind of automatically, which is pretty spiffy. So we do that with just adding some metadata and comments, and we can include things like transfer protocol schemes, the host, base path, a whole variety of things. So to start with, for our project, let's go over here to our main.go. This is our main package. And up here at the very top, before we even say package main, we're going to add some comments. We'll give this rodeos API. Let's just say this is a sample API about rodeos. Additional information can be found at, and we'll add in our URL for our GitHub. I actually think so. One of the things about Swagger is that they're very particular about spacing and whatnot, so we need to make sure that we have spaces there. So our GitHub is github.com/me, Ken W. Alger, Wild West Coding Audio App. Pretty sure that's what we did. All right, so now we want to say that we're going to have schemes of HTTP. Our host, right now we're just doing this local host 8080. Our base path that we're go to most of the time is just going to be slash. Any comments? Version 1.0.0. Versioning is always interesting as well because you want it version 1, do you want it not version 1, but we'll go with version 1 for here. We'll do contact, and you can contact little me out here on the range, and my email, kelger@cisco.com. If you want to reach out to me, happy to get feedback. So what does this consume? Our app right now is going to consume, and here's where spacing gets tricky, or, very persnickety. So it consumes application JSON, and right now it's going to produce application JSON as well. All right, and then we'll say that this is swagger.metadata. All righty. So with that in place here inside our main.go file, we can go back to the command line, open up our command line here. Let's close that down, give us a little space here for visibility. And we can generate a specification or spec file right from the command line. We can use the command swagger to generate a spec file and output it as swagger.json. Alrighty, and there we have it. And we can open that up and we can give a little space here, and we see how it's parsed that out. So that's pretty spiffy. And we over here we have a little bit of information here just in the preview here of Golang. But here's where it's really cool. Having to generate that JSON for us is all kind of fan-dabby-dozy, right? But what really makes me happier than pack mules seeing their stall is that Swagger provides a way to take that generated spec file and create a web UI for it. And we can do that pretty easily here. If we do Swagger and we want it to serve that file, so that's going to open this up. And it opened it up in a new window. So let me bring that over here, maybe. Where did it go? Let me find that window. Let's see if we can bring that. There we go. All right. So we'll bring that in. So we have our Rodeos API, which we defined in our comments, our version. We can download the Open API spec. Here's the content information, and so that's all pretty spiffy. And so this is one version of the UI. Let's come back over here. I want to show you all a different version if you don't like that look and feel of it. So we can do here again, give us a little bit of viewing space. We can have it serve a different UI. It's the Swagger UI. All right, so let's try that. And I personally kind of like this one better. I think this one looks a little bit nicer. So this is probably what I'm going to be using for most of this series. But you know, let me know. Let me know in comments. Let me know in chat. What have you? That which one you like better? Like I said, I kind of like this one better. So now that we've added comments to our main package and provided it with the Swagger meta tag, we have this page, and it's relatively helpful, but we can do better, I think, because we have other code that we can do, right? So let's take a look here inside. Let's stop that one. If we go here to Rodeo Handler, and inside our rodeo handler file, right before our function for our handler, we can add some comments, and we can annotate it and provide some information about what this particular function does. So let's give a little bit of space. We'll scroll up here for visibility. So this is going to be a Swagger operation. It's a get operation. It's based on that route, rodeos, and it's we'll call it list rodeos, right? Because that's kind of what it does. And then we can provide a better information there. It returns a list of rodeos. A little break there, and this produces, again, produces application JSON as well. So that's good. And then what are the responses that this function returns? So right now, we are just bringing back 200, right? So we're bringing back, I believe Swagger wants a line there, and our description of this, just a successful operation. Alrighty. So just, again, real briefly, with these comments and the metadata that we've added on top of the function here, we're able to provide some information about what this function does, what HTTP response gets returned, and along with a description of the response. As I've mentioned, indentation does matter and spacing matters, so hopefully I got that right. And if we come back, that doesn't look right, respawn. There we go. So come back here to the terminal. Let's generate the file again, generate the spec. Go out and do its thing. If we open that back up, we're starting to see the preview there. That's great. So it's added some additional information here about that path and that function. So if we go back up and we're going to serve our Swagger, lo and behold, our rodeos route here accepts GET requests to the rodeos route. And if we look in here, returns a list of rodeos. Right now, it doesn't take any parameters, and response content type is that application JSON that we mentioned. Code 200 is a successful operation. So that's pretty spiffy, I think, right? Pretty slick. And we'll add more to the Swagger UI page as we build out our API with other routes and HTTP methods. But for now that we have that kind of in place, I think we can, well, let's shut that down, just save a little bit of resources. Come back here. Sorry about that. Let's commit our changes. Added Swagger documentation integration. And we'll push that out. There we go. All righty. We have a working API. That's great. It's returning all of our rodeos from our sample data that's currently just in a JSON file. And we have, a start of our project documentation. But clearly we're going to need our API to do more than just return all the rodeos. I think, and I have kind of a little table here, but I think this would be kind of a good start for our routes and the HTTP methods to get handled. So we already have that first one returns a list of all the rodeos. It's our list rodeos handler. Some of the other ones that I think would make sense would be to create a new rodeo with post method, get a very specific rodeo with an ID, and then updating a rodeo and deleting a rodeo. So those are going to be the routes I think that would be a reasonable place to start with. So we can start building those out here. But this also has me thinking a little bit. So as we saw last week, and again here, and this is MongoDB Compass. So if we look here inside this database, we have a whole bunch of just faker data into our rodeos, and we have 105 of them. So we already have this mocked up data. It's already in a database. So we could go through and we could build all of our routes to use that JSON file that just has 5 rodeos in there. But then we're going to have to kind of rework everything to handle the database queries. That doesn't seem like a great use of our time. So I think I'm going to pivot a little bit here and make a little bit of a brief detour and get our database connection set up now. Hopefully, let's see here, we have a little bit of time left. Yeah, let's try and get through this database connection. So let's go back over to our IDE. Okay, so inside here, so we're in the rodeos handler. Now, as with most things in coding, right, there's a few different approaches for setting up a database connection. We could do it here inside handlers, and I think that gets a little bit messy and not really maintainable. I think a better way to do it is going to be to create an initialization function or an init function that can add the connection to the application context. And then that way it can be utilized throughout the entire application. Now, I mentioned earlier when I was doing the gitignore file that we're going to use some environmental variables that I'll need to access for the connection. So we can set that up here. There's a really nice port of Ruby's .env project that allows the loading of variables from a .env file or a .env file. And it's pretty easy to install. It gets installed with go get, and I'll put that resource in the video notes as well. So with that package installed and working, we can go in here and we'll create a new directory for this, and we'll call it instance. And then inside instance, we'll create a new file, and it's just going to be a .env file. So to start here, we're going to just do a few variables. We might expand on this later. We're going to need the MongoDB URI, which is the connection string to our database, which is in MongoDB Atlas, which is where that data was stored. MongoDB database. The database is live stream, and the collection is sample rodeos with capital R. Now, the MongoDB URI string has a password in there, so trying to be a little bit safe and secure, I'm going to just add that in there offline, just for security's sake. But you can go in to MongoDB Atlas and get the connection string, or in Compass here. So let me go back over here to Compass. So here's Wild West coding. So you can just copy the connection string there. It puts it into your clipboard, and then you can paste it over into your .env file. Okay, so we have our .env file set up. We have all the URI, the database, and the collection name set up. Now, if we go into main.go, we can handle our initialization function here. We're going to need a couple other variables, I think. So one is going to be for the context. We'll just do CTX for that variable. And then we will need a client for the MongoDB client. All right. And we want to make sure then that we get in all of our imports. So we have context, and I know we're going to need some other MongoDB imports eventually, but we'll hopefully get those in along the way here. So let's create our initialization function. Easy for me to say. Init. So inside here, what do we want this to do? So first off, we need to get those variables. We're going to do go.m. We're going to have that load, and we're going to have it load that. And looks like it's wanting another import here. There we go. And sync dependencies. All right. So apparently I had not found that or installed that before. But there we go. So here we'll handle this error, and it will make it a fatal error. We can't load that. And then the other import here that comes in is log, because we're doing some logging. Okay, so we've loaded that information in. We have access to it now. So we're going to see our context is our context background, right? And then we're going to get our client and any errors. We're going to have it connect to MongoDB. So we're going to connect into our context, and we're going to have it connect here to the URI string, and we're going to have it get that through the OS get environment variable of MongoDB URI. Okay, so we have that coming in. Hopefully that's all good. I think it looks pretty good. And if we have an error, we're going to have it so we want it to ping our context here, ping out to MongoDB. Our read pref is going to be primary. And here, if the error not nil, we want to log a fail error there too. All right. So assuming that everything goes well up to now, we're going to have it just say, hey, we connected to MongoDB. MongoDB Atlas. Let us know if that worked well. Then we're going to define our rodeo collection variable here as the rodeo collection that we set up. So it's going to be our client database. And we want the database name to be the one that we defined over in our .env, which is the MongoDB database. Again, is live stream because naming is hard. And our collection here is going to be, we're going to get that from the OS as well. And that is the rodeo collection. All right. And then for our rodeos handler, all right, so it's going to handle things for us, is going to be handlers dot, it's going to be a new rodeo handler. We're going to pass in the context and the rodeo collection. Where did... So we have an unresolved reference here for a new rodeo handler. Because over in rodeo handler, we don't have that set up yet. So let's do that real quick here. We need a new rodeo handler. Okay, and that's going to take context there, and it's going to take a MongoDB collection, right? And it's going to be a rodeo handler. And what are we going to return here? We want it to return pointer here to the rodeo handler with a collection, and the context is why are we not having unknown field collection in structural lit? Because we need to come up here and do that. Alrighty. That looks good. Now we can go back over here to main, and we're accessing OS. Let's make sure that we have that in there. If you notice, we have a few other MongoDB imports, MongoDB options and readpref. So let's run this now again and see if we get our message that we're connected to MongoDB Atlas. So if we do go run main.go, there we go. So we're listening. And if we go over to, right there, connected to MongoDB Atlas. Spectacular. So that looks very promising. We have a connection to a database. So let's go in and we'll stop that server running and clear that for visualization's sake, and then we can commit to database. Going to be Atlas. Commit and push those changes. right. All right, how are we doing on time here, folks? Looks like we have about 5 minutes left. All right, so reworking the list rodeos handler, I think is going to take a little bit of time. Probably not enough time to get that working today, but I think we can go in here today and we come back over here and we look at these. Let's just set these up and we'll comment them out so that the Gen framework is happy, but we'll get those set up here today. Again, comment those out and then we can start working on those next time. So let's come back over here and see what we're going to do here. All right, so we're going to do a router .post, and that path will again be just rodeos, and that's going to be a rodeos handler, and I think we call that new rodeo handler. And we'll come back and comment things out here in a second. The next one that we're going to do is a router.get for /rodeos with a specific ID. So an ID there is a variable, and we'll call that one rodeos handler get rodeo handler. So that's good. We need a put route for updating specific rodeo. That will be in rodeos handler, and that will be the update rodeo handler. And then we'll eventually want a delete item as well here. And we forgot our slash there. And rodeos /ID, and that will be rodeos handler /delete rodeo handler. So again, we can comment those out just to make things happy, but they'll be in place. Now, one of the kind of neat things with this framework, Gen, that you can do is you can do route grouping, which I find to be really useful for things like versioning, which if you're building a good API, knowing what version you're using is always a pleasant user experience. So we can go in here and let's create, they call them router groups. We'll add a little comment here, API version 1, endpoints, and we can create those routes. Endpoints, yeah, let's put end routes. Okay, so we're going to do a version 1. Is going to be equal to our router group. And it's going to be just v1. And then we go in and we define, put all these here inside our router group. Right? And then we can change this to version 1. So now we're getting this router. So yeah, we're getting this a router group here that's going to have v1, which is great. I don't know why we're getting that, but we'll take a look at that and we will revisit that in 2 weeks when we come back and see what the all error is, because I know we're getting really short on time here today. Thank you everybody for joining us. We'll revisit this router groups and we'll work on getting all of our data and our routes working, because that's what we're going to do. And, I'm really, really excited that everybody's been joining the Wild West coding. So the 29th of August will be our next one. We'll get router groups, that little error message fixed. We'll get the routes installed and data back, and we'll start looking at some other things that you might want to think about when you're building APIs and how we can handle those things with Go and Gen. So until next time, happy coding.